Are you having a hard time figuring out what to get Dad for Father's Day? You should check out Row 1 Brand's Vintage Pictorum Gallery. They have America's best sports art. With over 7,200 historic sports prints, you're assured to find something unique for Dad this Father's Day. Instead of a boring old tie, get him a historic baseball photo taken by Henry High Sandham at the historic Polo Grounds Stadium in New York City during the 1894 Temple Cup. Or, if he's an NFL buff, check out the 1963 vintage NFL poster. These are so good looking that you'll be amazed how they turn out. Shop now at sportshistorynetwork.com/row1 and save 15% off your order.
It's time for Lombardi Memory, a show that takes you back in time, into January or February, to the greatest one-day spectacle in all of sports. This is the Every Other Tuesday podcast that looks back at each and every one of the 50-plus Super Bowls and tells the story of who won and why. For the fan who needs more than just a box score, this podcast goes drive by drive, play by play, through the most dramatic games in history. I'm your host, Tommy A. Phillips, and you can visit my website at tommyaphillips.com, where you can find all of my books. Those include Great Eighties, a book that covers this Super Bowl and the next 4 of them as well. Today we have Super Bowl 20, which was held on January 26, 1986, between the first-time AFC champion New England Patriots and the first-time NFC champion Chicago Bears, with a never-ending controversy about why Walter Payton didn't score a touchdown. If you're looking for the full story of this 1985 season, pick up my Great Eighties book and you'll learn more than you ever wanted to know about that year and the rest of the 80s. As always, we have a pop quiz and then homework at the end of the episode. The pop quiz question for today is, how many of the top 5 career rushing leaders in NFL history have scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl? The answer will come at the end of the podcast. The 1985 New England Patriots were a unique team in NFL history. After starting off the season 2-3, the Patriots won each of their next 6 games and 8 out of 9. They won their final game over Cincinnati 34-23 to clinch the second wildcard spot in the AFC. Remember, there were only 2 wildcards at the time. The 11-5 Denver Broncos thus became the first 11-win team to miss the playoffs since the Baltimore Colts in 1967. The Patriots had the unenviable task of having to win 3 straight road games to reach the Super Bowl. They did just that, beating fellow wildcard New York 28-14, then number 1 seed Los Angeles 27-20. Finally, they went on the road to beat Miami 31-14 at the Orange Bowl, where they had not won since 1969. New England thus became the first Super Bowl team to win 3 road playoff games to get there. This feat would not be seen again until 2005. Running back Craig James rushed for 1,227 yards, and receiver Stanley Morgan racked up 760 receiving yards. Quarterback Tony Eason took the job from Steve Grogan during the regular season, and he threw for 2,156 yards and 11 touchdowns. He also threw for 17 interceptions, though, making his passer rating a paltry 67.5. If there was any star of the team, it might have been running back Tony Collins, who rushed for 657 yards and led the team with 52 catches, going for 549 yards and scoring 5 total touchdowns. Former number 1 overall pick Irving Fryer caught 39 passes for 670 yards and a team-leading 7 scores. But overall, the New England Patriots were the ultimate underdog. No one had ever gone their route to making the Super Bowl. As a third-place team in the AFC East who somehow got hot at the right time. Their opponent, though, wasn't of the same ilk. No, the Chicago Bears were the mightiest, proudest, most ferocious team in NFL history. Chicago won its first 12 games in a row, and most of them by convincing margins. 45-10 over the Redskins, 26-10 over the 49ers, 44-0 over the Cowboys, even 20-7 over the Patriots earlier in the season. They lost one game in 1985. That one loss came to the Dolphins 38-24 on a Monday night when Miami got all the bounces. But the Bears shut out both opponents in the NFC playoffs. They beat the Giants 21-0 and the Rams 24-0. NFL fans really missed out on a great matchup when Miami lost the AFC Championship game to New England. A Dolphins-Bears rematch would have been must-watch TV. Along the way, humongous defensive tackle William Perry became a folk hero for all his touchdown runs, as he take handoffs in short yardage situations at the goal line and just pound his way into the end zone. The Bears were full of brash personalities like quarterback Jim McMahon, who broke NFL rules by wearing headbands with the name Adidas on them. He wasn't allowed to show his sponsorship, so they fined him. But the Bears recorded a music video called the Super Bowl Shuffle, which swept the nation. The Bears' 46th defense was one of the greatest in the history of the league, with defensive end Richard Dent picking up 17 sacks, and linebacker Otis Wilson another 10.5. There was no team as memorable as this team in the history of the NFL. Plus, there was running back Walter Payton anchoring the offense. The all-time legend rushed for 1,551 yards and 9 touchdowns while leading the team with 49 receptions. Receiver Willie Gault had the most yards through the air with 704, while receiver Dennis McKinnon led the team with 7 touchdown catches. McMahon threw for just shy of 2,400 yards and 15 touchdowns. And the Bears had a very accurate kicker in Kevin Butler, who made all 51 extra points and 31 of 37 field goals. There wasn't a single weak spot on the roster. That set up this Super Bowl as the ultimate David versus Goliath matchup. The only difference was David didn't have any stones to fire with. The Patriots had no way of matching up against Chicago. Their only hope was to force turnovers. Head coach Raymond Berry decided to make his team completely key on Payton. Bears head coach Mike Ditka likewise chose to take advantage of the Pats' obsession with Payton. The Bears could beat you so many ways, and that's what they proved in this game. There was confusion about the coin toss. Referee Red Cassian had perhaps the worst game of his career on the biggest stage. He couldn't figure out whether Walter Payton had called heads or tails on the toss. Eventually, he believed a protesting Payton that he had called heads, and the Bears won the toss. It was a bizarre situation because the way the coin toss rules worked, the Bears wanted to lose the toss. You couldn't defer to the second half in those days. So it was either take the ball first or let the opponent receive to start both halves. So Chicago had no choice. They took the ball to start the game. Payton started out rushing for a 7-yard gain. On his second carry, though, he got hit by defensive end Julian Julius Adams, and he fumbled. Linebacker Larry McGrew recovered for the Patriots. The Pats took over near the 19-yard line of Chicago. Eason threw his first pass for tight end Lynn Dawson, but fell incomplete, and Dawson was hurt on the play. On Eason's next pass, he had Stanley Morgan breaking wide open, but Morgan just dropped the ball, incomplete. His third pass was incomplete as well, so kicker Tony Franklin came on and made a 36-yard field goal for the first points scored against Chicago all postseason. Galt returned the ensuing kickoff 19 yards to the 30. 2 plays into the drive, McMahon went deep for Galt, and he hit him for a 43-yard gain down to the New England 26. Fullback Matt Suhey ran it twice, getting a first down inside the 15. Facing third down a few plays later, McMahon tried to run for it, but he got flipped over by defensive back Ronnie Lippett. He was okay, but the Bears had to settle for a 28-yard Butler field goal to tie it at 3. The Patriots continued with their pass-first approach, with Eason throwing 2 passes on the next possession, both of which fell incomplete. He then was sacked by Dent and linebacker Wilbur Marshall. Chicago got the ball back after a punt to the 29. McMahon went play action to Galt for 18 yards, but the Bears had the punt as well. Punter Murray Buford's kick went for a touchback. James ran the ball for New England's first run of the game, and he went nowhere, tackled by linebacker Mike Singletary. Then defensive tackle Steve McMichael sacked Eason, who fumbled. Defensive tackle Dan Hampton recovered for the Bears. McMahon started out the new drive by throwing across the field to tight end Emery Moorhead. He went 8 yards down to the 5-yard line, but the officials missed a blatant clipping foul that sprung Moorhead for the gain. McMahon snuck for a first down on a third down carry, and then Ditka decided to try a trick play. On second down, he had Perry take the handoff and go back to pass. So it was big William Perry, the refrigerator, trying to pass, but he couldn't find anyone open. So he wisely went down for a minimal loss, technically a sack. The Bears settled for a 24-yard Butler field goal, but they now had a 6-3 lead, and they never surrender it. James fumbled on the first play of New England's next possession. Dent forced the fumble, and defensive back Gary Fensick recovered it. It took just 2 plays for Chicago to score. Suhey ran for 2 yards, then he took a pitch and went for an 11-yard touchdown. The Bears led 13-3 after 1 quarter. The Patriots went nowhere on their next possession, and the Bears got it back at their own 11. Running back Calvin Thomas ran for 5 yards on 2 carries. Then receiver Dennis Gentry took a handoff and got a first down at the New England 46. McMahon threw to Galt for 7 yards. Then he hit Suhey on a long pass down to the 15. Suhey carried it on each of the next 3 plays, getting a first down at the 5. 2 plays later, Perry came into the game, but he was just a decoy. He blocked the way for McMahon to run it in on the option. If McMahon would have pitched the ball to Payton on the option, we wouldn't still be hang-ringing over this Super Bowl. McMahon and not Payton scored the touchdown, and the Bears led 20-3. New England went 3 and out once again. Payton ran for 5 yards, but then Suhey ended up fumbling. Linebacker Steve Nelson of the Patriots forced a fumble, and defensive back Raymond Claiborne recovered it. At this point, Barry pulled Eason from the game and inserted Grogan. Eason did not complete a pass before leaving the game, making him the only starting quarterback in Super Bowl history to not complete a single pass. Grogan fired to Collins to get into Bears territory. He then found James on third down, which got New England its first down of the game. The Pats ended up punting anyway, though. Starting at the 20, the Bears put together a good drive. Payton ran for a first down at the 32, right before the 2-minute warning. The Pats got called for an illegal hands penalty to give Chicago another first down. On the next third down, McMahon found Gentry for 11 yards and a first down at the New England 46. Gentry ran for 5 more. Then McMahon fired to receiver Ken Marjoram for a 30-yard gain. 2 plays later, with no timeouts left, McMahon scrambled for a first down at the 2, and the clock began to run down. As McMahon got up, he got into a subbing match with New England Patriots who were trying to keep him from getting up. Some Bears got into the subbing as well, and the officials lost complete control of the game. The Bears then just hurried up. They snapped the ball to McMahon, who threw it away, even though no one was set. And Cassian called a 5-yard penalty on the Bears, but he forgot there was a 10-second runoff. So there was less than 10 seconds. The half should have been over, but instead the Bears got to try the field goal. Moreover, Cassian forgot to mark off the 5-yard penalty at first, only doing so at the request of the New England players. Eventually, Butler made a 24-yard kick, and the Bears took a 23-3 lead into halftime. Now, the Patriots had minus 19 yards of offense in the first half. They tried to make up for that on the first drive of the second half, with Grogan throwing to Morgan for 8 yards. Collins plowed up the middle for only the second first down of the game for New England. But then the levees broke and the Pats couldn't hold back the Bears' defense anymore. First, McMichael and Dent combined for a sack. Then the Pats got called for a false start. Then it was Wilson and Hampton combining for another sack. If it were a fight, they'd have to stop it, NBC announcer Dick Enberg said. How true. The only solace for New England was that punter Rich Camarillo got away a Super Bowl record 62-yard punt, one that was actually not even kicked all that well, but not picked up by a Bear, and it bounced all the way down to the 4. But the Bears took little time in advancing back downfield because McMahon started the next drive throwing a 60-yard bomb to goal. He then hit Moorhead for another first down at the 22. Payton ran for 7 yards in 2 plays. Then Suey got a first down at the 11. McMahon then found a wide-open Marjoram for a first down at the 1. McMahon took it in himself for a touchdown instead of handing off to Payton. And again, if he had handed off to Payton there, that would have silenced the critics. But McMahon scored, and Chicago led 30-3. When it rains, it pours, and New England was suffering through a torrential downpour. Grogan threw an interception to defensive back Reggie Phillips, and he returned it for a touchdown, 37-3. Then receiver Cedric Jones got hit by Fenchick, and he fumbled. Marshall recovered. He lateraled it to Wilson for a return to the 38. Payton carried it twice to get a first down to start the new Chicago drive. Then McMahon found Gentry wide open, streaking across the field. Gentry went out of bounds at the 1. First and goal, right? Well, that's what they ruled. But there was one problem. Gentry didn't just not get both feet in. He didn't even get 1 foot in. In college football, it would have been an incomplete pass, let alone the NFL. But Cassian continued having a bad day, and he ruled it a catch. Then came the most controversial play of the game. Instead of letting Payton get his touchdown and shutting up tens of thousands of fans forever, Ditka decided to let Perry score from the 1. He bowled over the Patriots and spiked the ball emphatically after scoring. It was now 44-3, but Payton was still without a touchdown. The Patriots did go on a long drive from there to score a touchdown, but it would be a waste of time for me to break it down to you. What does a fourth quarter touchdown in a 44-3 game really mean anyway? Grogan threw a fourth down touchdown pass to Fryer from 8 yards out. That made it 44-10. The rest of the game was just exhibition time. Steve Fuller entered at quarterback for Chicago, and like Eason, he didn't complete a pass. Of course, he was nursing a 34-point lead, so he really didn't need to connect. The Bears got down to the New England 5 anyway, where linebacker Jim Morrissey intercepted. They got to the New England 5 not on the drive, but whenever linebacker Jim Morrissey intercepted a pass and returned it 48 yards. If not for Collins making a tackle on that play, the Bears would have been the first team in Super Bowl history to score 50 points. What did it matter, though? They were already the first team to score over 40. Ditka gave Payton ample opportunities to score a touchdown, but the Patriots did everything in their power to stop him. He couldn't get in. Ditka deserves no blame for Payton not scoring this game because Payton had a couple tries on this drive and he just could not punch it in, not even on fourth down. The resulting field position caused Grogan to get sacked by defensive end Henry Waxter for a safety. The final score was Chicago 46, New England 10. It was fitting. The 46 defense led the Bears to a 46-point performance. The MVP of Super Bowl 20 was Richard Dent. He made a significant impact early in the game, getting 1.5 sacks. I have no problem with that pick. After all, it should have been someone on defense. But if I were to give it to an offensive player, I'd have to pick McMahon. He threw for 256 yards, including some long bombs. He rushed for 2 touchdowns as well. McMahon was the difference between Chicago being a good team and a great one. Early in the season, when he was hurt, Chicago didn't look all that great. Once he took over, the Bears rolled. McMahon deserves so much more credit than he gets. The best player in the losing team? There were none. So I'll just give it to the punter Camarillo for his 43.8 yard average on 6 punts, including the Super Bowl record punt of 62 yards. New England stunk it up so badly that no one deserves any credit on the roster. Who is the LVP? Tony Eason is too easy a choice as least valuable player. And Craig James deserved it a lot as well. But that's not where I'm going with this. I'm going to give this one to Red Cassian, the famous referee who always loved to yell, "First down!" Had the worst game of his career. He admitted as much, refusing to go to a party after the game. He knew he had messed up. The officiating was so horrendous, but no one noticed thanks to Chicago's dominance. If this had been a closer game, this game would have gone down like Super Bowl 40 as one of the most controversial Super Bowls of all time. Who was the best player that no one remembers? That'd have to be Reggie Phillips, who scored on the pick 6. Of all the Bears' defensive players, you remember most of them, but you don't remember him. His pick helped sold away was an easy victory. The biggest play of this game was McMahon's early 43-yard bomb to goal. That got the Bears' offense going, and although they only scored 2 field goals on the first 2 possessions, they were on their way. As for the biggest play that no one remembers, I go with Payton's fourth down run in the fourth quarter that ended up well side of the goal line. Well, no one remembers it because they were already up 44-10. But why that play? Because right then and there, Ditka gave Payton the chance to score a touchdown, and he didn't. If he had scored, then we wouldn't have had to hear that Ditka made the wrong choice by letting other guys score touchdowns while Payton didn't get one. But Ditka did give him that opportunity, and the Pats defense just stopped him. Ditka needs to be let off the hook on this one. Payton had his shot, he just couldn't score. And that leads us to our pop quiz question of the day. How many of the top 5 players in career rushing yards have scored a Super Bowl? The answer is 2. Emmitt Smith, of course, scored multiple times, but second place Payton did not. Third place is now Frank Gore, and he did indeed score a touchdown in Super Bowl 47. Fourth place Barry Sanders never reached the Super Bowl, as was also the case for fifth place Adrian Peterson. Only Smith and Payton have Super Bowl rings. As for homework, here are 2 books for starters. Keep in mind that there are a bunch of books on these Bears. I can't list all of them here, so I'm just going to go with these 2. You got The Bears, How the 1985 Monsters of the Midway Became the Greatest Team in NFL History by Steve Delson, and Monsters, the 1985 Chicago Bears and the Wild Heart of Football by Rich Cohen. Again, there are others as well, and I don't mean any slight to them. But there's lots of books on this Bears team, so check them out. And those are the top 2 I'm thinking of at the moment, but I know there are others. So the Bears, they finished 18-1, won the Super Bowl while allowing just 10 points all postseason long. They won the Super Bowl by the largest margin in history at the time, 36 points, and could have won by even more. 51-10 was very possible had Payton scored. It's time to let Ditka off the hook, because careful watching of this Super Bowl shows that Payton did have his chance to score. He just couldn't punch it in. Next time, we'll have John Elway and Phil Simms going at it in a crazy Super Bowl that was a classic through 2 quarters. By the 4th quarter, though, the only drama left was the first ever Super Bowl Gatorade bath and the first player to say they were going to Disney World after the game. All those stories will be told on the next podcast. You can also read them in my book, Great Eighties, a journey through another amazing decade in pro football history, and you can find that at TommyAPhillips.com. Until next time, so long.
We here at the Sports History Network proudly partner with 26 podcasts, all revolving around the history of sports. But did you know that many of our hosts were sports history authors way before they started their shows? It's true. We've got Joe Ziemba, host of When Football Was Football, Joe Zagurski, host of Pro Football in the 1970s, Mark Morthier, host of Yesterday's Sports, Tommy Phillips, host of Lombardi Memories, and Scott Adamson, co-host of From the 55-Yard Line. All these authors have many books for you to choose from. To check them out, go to our website at sportshistorynetwork.com/sportshistorybooks. Pick up your copy today. Soundtrack provided by Kevin MacLeod of FilmMusic.io.